Hello and welcome to Little Things with Amber Obi Swenson. Today's episode is a continuation of our series on Proverbs 31 with an episode that I am titling A Mom for the Ages. Hey, it's Amber, wife, mother, type A child of God. Here at Little Things, we look at everyday issues from a biblical perspective with one simple goal, to know and love God more. Thanks for listening. I mentioned last week that I always struggled with sermons or messages that dealt with motherhood because there was so much guilt. It didn't matter what I was doing well. I just knew that there were certain things in motherhood that I just never seemed to get right, or it just felt like I could never do enough to get it right. And I just want to stop you right here and remind you that is not what this podcast is about. First of all, you and I are on the same journey, and I've gotten some things very wrong with motherhood. You might be getting some things wrong. We are saved by grace, and Jesus comes and meets us in our despair, and he sits on the floor next to us. He doesn't stand up in heaven looking down at us, telling us how terrible we are. He meets us in our mess and says, let me help you. Let's see what we can do to make this better. So this is not about guilt. This is not about saying, oh man, you're not doing this right, or this right, or this right, or this right. That is not who I am. And that's not what this message is. So don't let that even cross your mind at any point in this podcast. All right. With that, let's get started. So J. Sidlow Baxter, who wrote the book, Explore the Book, I'm using the breakdown he uses of the Proverbs 31 woman. He breaks her into 4 categories. We've already done that she's a good woman and that she's a good wife. And today we're going to talk about her being a good mother. And what does that mean? So Baxter breaks this up into 3 categories. So first of all, she clothes her family wisely. And he uses verse 21 from Proverbs 31, which says, when it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. Okay, so as moms, we kind of know this. You know, before the soccer season or the basketball season, you go out and you buy the shoes, or you make sure that they have the uniforms that they need. We're making sure that they have the clothes that they need for the Christmas program and everything that they need for spring break or when we go on vacation. We're the ones a lot of times, most of the time, that are taking our kids shopping and getting them the new shoes when their feet grow, or getting them the special boots that they want for whatever. And so, this is part of what we do, is make sure that our kids not only have clothes, that's part of it, but also that they're clean and in their dressers or in their closet and ready for them when they need it. And that brings an incredible amount of, stability to a house, security, when our kids know that we've got their back and that we will get their things to them on time. One of the things that I have mentioned to my kids, because now I have one daughter who's married and my other daughters are 17 and 19. And I have told them multiple times, one of my regrets in raising them was having too many clothes for them. So we took a lot of people's hand-me-downs. So we would get boxes and bags of clothes all the time, which was great. We were getting free clothes. But my kids had just packed dressers and closets, and there was so much clothes. And, the more clothes that you have, the more you have to take care of. I had a neighbor who just lived 2 houses down. She did daycare, so she was at home, and she had a rule that her kids had 5 outfits for every season. So before school started, she would take them and get, 5 things, 5 outfits. And then at Christmas, they would get a new outfit or 2. Or like accessories, like a sweater or a new pair of pants, so that they could swap things out. And then when spring came, she would buy them, the t-shirts and the shorts as opposed to the sweater. And then in summer, they would get their sandals and all that. but they never had more than 5 outfits at a time. And typically by the time that they were done with those outfits, they were throwing them away because the kids had worn them so much. But she said that her kids didn't have all these dressers, and closets full of clothes. They could always find what they wanted. And they loved all the clothes that they had. We were a church-going family, so, we kind of had church clothes and then school clothes and that type of thing. And my kids were in sports usually as they got older. So we had sports practice clothes and all that. We also played outside all the time. Summer, winter, didn't matter. And so we had all kinds of, snowsuits and hats, mittens, scarves, and all the outside clothes. I used to, when my kids were really little, we'd have, outside clothes versus inside clothes, because when they were outside playing in the sandbox and, digging in the dirt and all that stuff, they'd get muddy. And so we had outside clothes, we had inside clothes and all that. But anyway, I have told my kids that one of the things that I sort of regret is that we had so many clothes. And it kind of it was hard to keep track of it all. But another thing that has changed my life so much, I was always the type of person who had laundry baskets all over my house when my kids were young. And somewhere along the line, I just made a decision, one of those lines in the sand that would never happen again. And I do a load of laundry, I put it in the dryer, and I fold it immediately when it is out of the dryer, as I'm taking it out of the dryer. And then I take it upstairs and, I put the towels and stuff away. But my kids' clothes all go in piles, so that I have a pile for everybody, and it's their responsibility to put them away. And that has saved me so much, because I never, ever have laundry baskets anywhere anymore. The clothes is dealt with immediately after it comes out of the dryer. So I do a load of laundry, I get it done, I follow through with it completely. It's not put somewhere where I have to deal with it again, which was super aggravating to me when my kids were young. So that being said, I don't know if that will help you at all, but it's helped me enormously. But I also want to mention that there's a spiritual component to this. The Apostle Paul says in Colossians chapter 3, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. It's important as Christian mothers that we provide for our children. No doubt about that. But one of the best ways that we can clothe our family wisely is teaching them to clothe themselves with these traits and characteristics that the Apostle Paul tells us. Compassion is looking out for other people, to have pity on others. And we tried to teach our children as they were growing up to really stand up for the person who was being picked on, or if someone on the bus was being ignored, at least smile at them and ask them how their day was. You don't have to have a conversation with them if you don't know them very well, but at least acknowledge that they're there so that someone is noticing them. And who knows, they might become a friend. So teach your children to clothe themselves with compassion, with kindness. That's your tone of voice, the words that you choose. You can always choose to say things in a harsh way or in a kinder way. Humility is just, thinking less about yourself and more about others, and knowing that you are not the only factor in the situation. Gentleness is, strength restrained. It's not a bad thing to be strong by any stretch of the imagination. We want to be strong. And yet gentleness is, again, restraining that strength and not letting the full force of our words or our actions, knock people down. And patience is just a matter of, staying with people in their issues, being there for the long run, not being easily angered or annoyed because they haven't gotten it yet. Patience is walking with our brothers and sisters in Christ for the endurance of whatever they have to go through. So while we do want to be the kind of mom who, offers the security of, clothes in the drawer or clothes in the closet and having the right size shoes, teaching our children to clothe themselves with godly traits is even more important, because this can take them from today all the way through their life. All right, next. A good mother feeds her household well. So from verse 15, we read, she gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. And from verse 27, she watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. This is, making sure that there's food in the fridge, making sure that the kids have the snacks that they want and things for lunches, for sports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also important, I think, as we're talking about feeding our household well, to make sure that we have at least a thought for not letting food become more than it should. So for instance, for many years, I, used food as security. So if I was having a hard day, I would find something to munch on. If I had a fight with one of the kids, I would go to the fridge or the freezer. It's so easy in our society where we have excess to use food in ways that it wasn't meant to be used, to use it as our comfort, to use it as our security, to use it as even a companion when nobody else is around. And yet that puts food in God's place, and it brings it to the level of idolatry. God is our only sense of security and comfort. If you are ever in a situation where food is not around, where are you going to go to feel comfortable and to feel secure? If you have made that your habit, the better habit is to teach our children, when you are feeling uncomfortable, when you are in a situation that feels very much out of control and you're looking for comfort and you're looking for security, go to God. Run to God. Run nonstop every time. God, I feel out of control. I don't know what to do with this situation. This is bigger than me and I need your help. That will never fail them, ever. Even when the munchies, settle down, God will be there. Now, also it said in verse 27, she does not eat the bread of idleness. And this is painful to talk about, because I think all of us, I don't want to overstep my bounds, but am I wrong to say that all of us struggle with this just a little bit? When I was raising my children, when my kids were born, so my first was born in 2000, I had a computer, but I didn't use it very often. Email wasn't a huge thing. We had a phone that actually was just a phone. It was connected to a wall, or it was cordless, but it wasn't like the phones that we have today. I didn't have my first smartphone until 2018. And there's such a temptation. There's such a temptation to have this phone where you can just, scroll for hours nonstop at the expense of time spent with your children, time spent doing things for your children and for your household. So I just heard yesterday, I was on my phone and I saw a reel of a mom who said that she used to always go to the playground and sit on her phone. So she had done the thing, right? She took her kids to the park, to the playground for them to play, and she'd sit and be on her phone. And she became convicted that maybe she shouldn't be spending the time doing that. And so she put her phone away, and she could not believe how many times her kids were looking at her to see if she was watching and saw what they did. Mom, look, I climbed all the way up here. Mom, did you see that? I went down the slide. Mom. And she said she missed so much when she was on her phone. And I found that too. I used to cook all the time with my phone going. And I think it's because I'm at a different stage of life now. 2 of my children have moved out, and it's amazing how little you see them once they move out of your house. Both of my children who got married initially moved into the house next door to us and rented for a little bit. Even so, I'd see them coming and going. That's not the same as them stopping over and chatting or whatever. And now with both of my children moved on, I see them once a week if I have them over. And for my, daughter and her husband who live a state away, I see them when we're able to get together. And you realize that as your children start leaving home, man, you have so few opportunities to really make it count. And so now when somebody walks in the house, I may have my Christian music playing or whatever. Sometimes I'm scrolling as I'm cooking or doing dishes, and listening to something. But I try as my kids come in the house now to shut everything down. Like if they want to talk, I am there to listen because there are so few opportunities to connect with them. And again, this is something that is different as you see your kids grow up. When they're young, it feels like they are going to be there forever and that you're never going to get any time to yourself. But you really realize as your children start leaving how few opportunities you still have to connect with them, and it makes a difference. And to that, I would just caution you to be deliberate about how much time you want to spend on your phone doing that stuff. I'm not going to be legalistic because as I just told you, I'm on my phone. I use my phone. I enjoy connecting with my friends that way, finding a funny reel and sending it their way, or finding a reel that I know will encourage someone. I love doing that, and it's okay to do that. But I also know how much time can just fly away as you are scrolling. And one of the things that I have been super, super deliberate about as my children have gotten older is keeping our house clean because I want them to have their friends over all the time. As often as they want to be over, I want them to be over. And now when my kids bring friends over, most of the time they're cooking food. They don't want me to cook or prepare anything. They just want the kitchen. So I need to keep the kitchen clean, and I need to keep the bathrooms clean, and I need to keep the living room clean and the dining room table because that's where they're going to be with their friends. And so if I waste time scrolling at the expense of keeping my house clean, and all of a sudden I get a text, "Hey mom, we're coming over. I have 3 friends with me." I feel that. All of a sudden I'm like, oh man, what was I doing sitting and wasting time when I could have had the house ready for them? And more often than not anymore, my kids know that I want them to have their friends over. They're welcome anytime. They just show up. They don't even send me a text anymore. So these days I'm pretty deliberate about, I don't have time to sit and scroll. If the kitchen floor is super grimy and I don't want people to see that, or if it's been a week since the toilet's been scrubbed, I need to get in there and make sure that I get that bathroom cleaned up and change the towels because there's a good chance at some point one of my kids is bringing someone home. And that's just a reminder to keep that in check. I know how hard it can be, but I always go back to, ever since I worked with the elderly, when I'm 80 years old, what will I be glad I did? And what are the things that I'll think, Amber, why didn't you figure this out sooner? And definitely being on my phone or consumed with technology is one of those things that I just think, it'll steal so much time that I can't get back. And I don't want to ruin the things that I could have done because of that. All right, moving on. The last category that Sidlow Baxter uses for a good mom is that she shops sensibly. He uses verse 14 in Proverbs 31, which says, "She is like the merchant ships bringing her food from afar." And verse 18, "She sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night." Shopping sensibly. So I wanted to look up, what does sensible actually mean? It's chosen with wisdom and prudence. That's keeping the future in mind. And the second definition is practical and functional rather than decorative. Man, I don't want this to hurt, but sometimes it does. And it's like God, not me, trying to make this hurt. But that second definition, practical and functional rather than decorative. In America, we love our stuff. All of us. We're all inclusive in this. We love to get more. We love to go all out for holidays, for birthday parties, for whatever. And the problem with that is it is so easy, just like wasting the time scrolling without even realizing what's happening. It's so easy to all of a sudden spend $100, $200 without even thinking about it, which isn't a problem, except what are we doing to save for the future? What are we doing to invest in God's kingdom? If we are making sure that we are investing in God's kingdom, and that's a priority, and if we are making sure that we are saving for the future, for a time when we will need to rely on the money because we're no longer working, if we're doing those things and we decide that we still have the money around and available to do these other things, great, fine, no worries. However, if you look at the amount of people who carry a considerable balance on their credit cards, or who overspending is a way of life because they want to live a certain way, then we have to step back and say, are we using our money wisely? Are we shopping sensibly, keeping our family's future in mind? One of the things that I did well when my children were growing up, and again, I did lots of things wrong. One of the things that I did well that my kids have loved that we did is we did not buy our children gifts the whole time that they were growing up, not for birthdays, not for Christmas, because they got gifts from their grandmas and they got gifts from other people. And so what we did is we put a set amount of money into their college fund for their birthday and at Christmas every year. And then once in a while, if there was a reason or if, we had a little extra money, we'd throw some more in there. And 3 of my children so far have been attending school, and that money has been a huge blessing. 2, I should say, attended college after high school, and it's been a huge blessing. The one that didn't go to college, we were able to transfer his funds to the next child and then give him a payout of the amount of money that we had saved for him, which he used for a down payment on a house. And so, yeah, it's fun to buy your kids all the little toys when they're 3 and new outfits. But you know what? If their grandparents are already doing that, man, putting that $50 or $100 away so that they have it later on, that can really add up as you continue to put that away for them. And that has been a huge blessing for my children. And so just when you're shopping and you're thinking about how you're using your money sensibly, keep in mind the future. What's going to matter 20 years from now? Are your kids going to be happy that you bought a new, set of furniture for the deck? Or would they rather that you put that money in your IRA so that you're not trying to live with them when you're 75 years old? I don't know. Those are all things that we should consider to make sure that we're using our money sensibly. I just wanted to note too that it says her lamp does not go out at night. And, this has come up over and over in this proverb when it comes to the wife of noble character. She doesn't have a hard time getting up in the morning, and she doesn't have a hard time staying up late at night. And I think that's a good reminder for us to consider our lifestyle. What are the things that you might be doing that make it hard to get out of bed in the morning? If you're staying up late at night, are you staying up doing the things that are beneficial to your family? That's all I'm going to say. I think we feel this a lot of times. Like I said, the way I started this, moms get this. We can put more guilt on us than anyone else. So we don't need anybody else to put guilt on us because we're doing a pretty good job of it. And I don't want that. Look, one of the best passages in the Bible is Lamentations 3:22 and 23, I think, when it talks about God's mercy being new every morning. His compassion never fails. You blew it yesterday. Who cares? Who cares? Do differently today. Make new habits. That is the beautiful thing about life in this world. The sun sets, and then tomorrow we get to make new decisions. And as we know better, we do better. We can change the trajectory of our family when we make different decisions. Huge. Years and years ago, my husband and I went to a marriage retreat. And at the marriage retreat, they asked us to write down what the characteristics were that we saw in our spouse before we married them that made them attractive to us. And one of the things that I've always said about my husband, he's probably the kindest guy that I know. He just goes out of his way all the time to help other people. He's a nurse. He just has it in him. His DNA is to have a tender heart and to be super kind. He's also extremely funny. Just doesn't matter how embarrassing the situation or what kind of thing we get ourselves into it. He can crack a joke and have me laughing, and I love that about him. But what he wrote down about me absolutely took me off guard. He said what attracted him to me before we started dating is that he knew that I would be a good mom. And the funny part about that is when we were dating, I didn't even know if I wanted kids. Honestly, going into the marriage, I was the one saying, hey, Steve, I think I would love to be, an author, and I want to go to grad school, and I want to take this as far as I can. Didn't want to talk about kids at all. And if kids were involved somewhere in the situation, it was way, way far away. Like, I don't know. And long story short, after we had our first baby, I was sold. He saw something in me that I didn't even know about myself. I had done tons of babysitting. I nannied for a while, but I didn't know that I wanted to be a mom. And all of that is to say that for a Christian man, knowing that their children are well cared for and knowing that we are not just providing the physical things, but we are also nurturing them to know the Lord and to follow God's ways. That is an incredible blessing to a man who goes off to work and leaves his children at home with his wife. And so don't downplay the role of mom and look at it as the huge honor that it is. So often for those of us who did stay at home, we would say what people ask all the time, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm just a mom, just a mom, just a mom. No, you are not just a mom. You are raising children to know God. You are taking care of your household. You are keeping yourself busy, doing so many things for so many different people. There is nothing just about that. It is a beautiful, wonderful, amazing thing. Take it seriously and then forgive yourself often. The times that you screw up, the decisions that you made that didn't go well, oh well. So what? We'll start over tomorrow. Pray your way through. Man, there are so many times I found myself praying that God would make up for what I lack. One of the prayers that I've prayed is that my kids would remember the good and forget the bad and forgive the bad. There were certainly things that Steve and I did not do well. And I pray that they forgive us and that they move past it and that they remember the good and remember that they were loved and that we loved God and wanted that to be a priority. Okay, here are some questions for you to consider as you go through this week. As you think about your family's priorities, are you truly making God number one? Or are sports, music, other activities pushing God aside? And I will definitely tell you, there were sports seasons that God was not getting the number one position in our family life. We were trying to maintain devotions every night, but it was crazy. Are you cognizant that food can be used as security or comfort in place of God? Are you making sure to teach your children to thank God for their food and their spiritual gifts? So not just what God blesses them with at the table to eat, but also the spiritual gifts that he is blessing them with. How are you incorporating God's word into your family life? And if you aren't, just start. Don't worry about what you haven't done. Now is the perfect time to start family devotions. Start small. Start in the New Testament. Read one little episode a night. It doesn't have to be huge. Say a prayer. If you aren't good at praying out loud, spontaneously, buy a prayer book and just pray a prayer. Or sometimes devotion books. If you buy a devotion book, a family devotion book, they will have a prayer there. You don't have to make this hard. Just start. Put aside time for God in your life, and those things will return exponentially. Anytime that you are pointing your children spiritually towards God, you are growing them as Christians, and that's what you want for them. You want them to walk with God all the days of their life. You want them to be in heaven with you for eternity. That's the most important thing. So we have to make sure we're investing in what truly, truly matters. All right. My guess is a mama. And if you do, and this would be encouraging to her, please send this her way. Send it to someone, even if you're questioning and saying, hey, you know what? Do you think this is true or not? And then have a conversation about it, because moms need to support each other. So share it with a friend, get together, talk about this over coffee, whatever. And I'll see you next time. This has been Little Things, because in God's kingdom, the little things are the big things.